It was an ordinary morning at the airport, or so it seemed. The bustling crowd, the hum of announcements, and the sound of rolling suitcases blended into a familiar rhythm. But everything changed the moment a group of strangers locked eyes on Kendra. She stood confidently in line at the check-in counter, a black woman in her mid-30s with striking features and a quietly commanding presence. Yet, as she approached, whispers rippled through the crowd. The dismissive glances and subtle scoffs were enough to make her feel the sting of discrimination again. She could feel their eyes on her, sizing her up, judging her. The family of tourists snickered, an older man smirked, and the young woman in front of her seemed to adjust her purse more tightly, as if Kendra's very presence was a threat. What they didn't know, what they couldn't possibly know, was that Kendra wasn't just anyone. Beneath the surface of her confident, composed exterior, there were layers to her story that would leave them all speechless. Not long ago, Kendra had been homeless, scraping by on the streets, invisible to the world around her. People like those in the terminal would walk past her without a second glance, without a thought for her humanity. But she had a secret no one at the airport could ever imagine. Kendra wasn't just a woman with a troubled past, she was the heir to a massive fortune, one hidden in plain sight. Her father, an enigmatic figure, had passed away under mysterious circumstances, leaving behind a cryptic will that nobody could decipher. For years, she had been investigating, piecing together clues that led her here, to this very moment. The man who had once called her worthless had no idea that he had just signed his own fate with a single look. As the strangers continued to mock her, Kendra remained unfazed, though her mind was racing. There was a hidden message in the world she lived in, a message that only a few could ever comprehend. When the airport security guard called her out of the line, the whispers escalated into full-blown mutters of suspicion. What was going on? Was this an attempt to delay her travel, or was something much bigger at play? But what happened next would leave the airport in shock. The security guard handed Kendra a sealed envelope, not one from her own belongings but one clearly meant for her. The letter was from a mysterious source, someone who had been tracking her every move for months. Inside the letter was an address and a cryptic message: "The time has come to reclaim what is yours." Kendra's heart raced. This was at the moment that would change everything. She walked away from the counter, the letter burning a hole in her pocket. The people who had mocked her had no idea of the game they were all part of. They didn't know that their assumptions about Kendra's worth were about to backfire in ways none of them could imagine. As she walked through the airport, the tension mounted. Who had left her this letter, and what did it mean? What was the secret behind the fortune that had been hidden from the world for so long? Was it just money, or was there something darker at play? Kendra's eyes darted over the faces of the crowd, her mind racing with possibilities. And then, in a moment of eerie calm, she saw him, the man who had been watching her for days, sitting in the corner of the terminal with an unreadable expression. She knew him. He was a figure from her past, one who had once promised her answers but had disappeared without a trace. But now, the time for questions was over. The answers were finally within reach, but as Kendra moved closer, the crowd seemed to part around her, as if they were all suddenly aware of the weight of the moment. The fortune, the power, and the mystery, it was all about to come crashing down. But was Kendra truly ready for what she was about to uncover? In the final moments of her journey, Kendra stood at the precipice of her future, surrounded by strangers who had once underestimated her. They didn't know the depth of her past or the riches she held. They didn't know that the real game was only just beginning. The letter's message rang in her mind: the time has come. But for Kendra, the question wasn't what would happen next, it was whether she could trust those who had always doubted her, or whether the very people who had dismissed her were the ones who would pay the price for their ignorance. And as the final seconds ticked down, Kendra made a choice that would alter the course of her life forever. But what she did with the fortune, the secrets, and the power she now held, was a story for another time. The true test was just beginning, and the world would soon learn that underestimating Kendra had been their biggest mistake. The story of a black woman discriminated against at the airport? It was only the beginning of a far greater tale that was about to unfold in ways nobody could have predicted. What happens next? Well, you'll have to wait and see.